on this morning slash afternoon, wherever you're dialing in from. We just want to thank you so much from the Tribal Youth Resource Center for joining us today for our implementation of tribal youth programs and nurturing the growth of children, family, and communities. And so for today, I think what we'll do is just go ahead and get started opening in a good way. We've got one of our youth ambassadors, Colby Whitefender, that's going to join us for an opening.
Hello, can y'all hear me? I'm going through a back room now.
Having a little bit of hard time hearing you, Colby. Are you able to turn up your volume a little bit?
Hello?
Yep, I heard you for just a split second.
Oh no. Yeah.
There we go.
What about
Sounds like we're having a little bit of tech related issues. Oh, we've lost them. Um, let's see, maybe Jerry, would you like to do an opening for us today?
Sure, until Colby returns, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. We wish you a most joyful day. And as our ancestors always told us, we give thanks for this opportunity to be alive today. We take time to look at our sacred gifts and the generosity that have been given to us through our teachings, through our ceremonies, our songs, our dances, in our healing ways. And this is one way that we do that, is sharing our knowledge and wisdom with each other. And so with that, I welcome each and every one of you to open your hearts and minds to the voices of those that are joining us to share their experiences, their knowledge, and their expertise in working with our young people, our elders, and everyone who's in our circles of community. We wish that each and every one of us will gain something good, take it with us, put it in our medicine bags, and use it whenever we are asked and requested, and do so in a good way. Thank you. Teresa?
Just kidding, I was practicing. Thank you so much, Jerry, for doing an opening for us today. So with that, next slide, please, Antonia. So I am Teresa Nord. I am Dene and of the Indigenous Peoples of Mexico, and I am a Tribal Youth Resource Center staff. And joining me today, again, Jerry Rainbird. Jerry, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Teresa. Good morning and good afternoon. And I am from the Nehio Nation. Most people refer to us as the Cree, born and raised in Montana, but now work and live in Olympia, Washington, among the beautiful cedar trees, the salmon, and the people of the Pacific Northwest. And I will turn it over to Kaylie, one of our panelists.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for that nice welcoming. My name is Kaylie Hutcheon. I work for the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians up in the northwest corner of the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. We reside here in beautiful Peshabe Town, is where our tribal government center is. So my job is actually truancy intervention specialist with the tribe. So we have a program here that, thanks to our grant, we're able to offer. We call it Na Dima Dida, which in Anishinaabe is let us help one another. So that's what we call our truancy prevention program. I am not only the intervention specialist, I'm also the program manager. So I do all of the back end work on the grant as well. I got into this work with at-risk youth. I come from a family of teachers. Both my parents were teachers. My dad's two brothers, two sisters, their spouses, and my grandparents were all in teaching and administration. So I was kind of born into a teaching family. I taught for over a decade in the public school systems in the area, and just really had a heart for working with our Indigenous youth. And this position became available during COVID, and I made the switch over to working for the tribal government. So that's a little bit about me to get started. And I'll turn it over to Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylie. Hauka, Memeyutamawa, Stephen White, Winichui, San Pasqual, Maikupai. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen White. I am the Tribal Youth Prevention Program Manager here for the San Pasqual Band of Mission Indians. We are Ipai Kumeyaay, that is Northern Kumeyaay in San Diego, California. And the inspiration for our program really is at our education department. There's a lot of focus on career readiness, college exploration, but we saw there was a need for more prevention and intervention services for our tribal youth. So that's really the inspiration behind our program, because we recognize that, as we try to push our students for academic success, we have to look at some of those gaps in some of the services and resources that our youth and families have. So that's really why we wanted to bring this tribal youth program in, and we were luckily able to get the first round of grant funding back in 2018, and we reapplied and received more funding in 2022. So I'm glad that we were able to kind of keep that going and sustain a lot of the work that we started. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I've been in prevention, intervention, and treatment services prior to that in the public sector. So this has been quite a shift. And I would say that because, I served along with other prevention specialists for our county government. You're talking about 11 school districts. And that's a county of about 400,000 people. So in my previous work, it was more of a caseload that I had. You're talking about 150 to 200 kids that I worked with per year, but those are really cases. So being able to work for San Pasqual has been honestly a breath of fresh air, because I'm able to work a lot more closely with students and their families. They're not just cases, and there's not just, again, 100 to 150 new cases every year. These are students that I've watched from middle school graduate, and some of those students are, have gone on to college. So this has definitely been a great experience for me. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you too so very much for joining and being willing to bring your experience and expertise within your tribal youth programs. We did have another panelist that was going to join us today, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it at Pendleton from the Lower Sioux Indian community. So we have Stephen and Kaylie that's going to join us and just really kind of give some of their experiences within the harvesting change and enhancement as enhancement grantees. Next slide, Antonia. And so just, Jerry, if you want to go ahead with the vision and purpose today.
Sure, and as everyone can see, we want to envision a future where all of our Indigenous, Native, tribal youth thrive through our traditional life ways. And in that, the way we do that is enhancing the opportunities for our communities to expand their potential, especially in protecting and nurturing our most sacred asset, and that's our youth. And that's the reason why we're here today, is to really emphasize that. So next slide. And our objectives, hopefully by the end of the session, we're going to strengthen your understanding of our strategic approaches that can be used when faced with implementing your programs and the challenges that are a part of that. And also, we want to cultivate the opportunity for us as peers to learn through the experiences of our tribal youth grantees. And then, hopefully, we'll also strengthen your knowledge of sustainability strategies that are viable and that are practical and are culturally informed. Back to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Jerry. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start the discussion with our panelists today, and we'll just kind of go through each one of them if you just want to share for a few minutes on your experience with this. And we'll start with the first question. Kaylie, do you want to go ahead and start us out with the first question of, sharing your accomplishments that your program has achieved?
Sure. Thank you, Teresa. So I started working this grant. It's a 2018 grant, but I joined March of 2021. So one would think that the grant had been kind of going and flowing. However, nobody had been in the position longer than about 6 or 7 weeks, and we'd only had 2 previous people. So this was definitely a need for the community. So a big accomplishment for me and for our program was actually making progress with families that have been truant in our community for years. Unfortunately, in Michigan, our truancy laws are very vague. They're very open-ended. So this position was a way to take connections that I already had made working in our public schools as a teacher with those families and with those students. I already knew about 100 of our 400 student population for our 6-county service area. I already knew about 100 kids. So I sort of had a place, a jumping off point, if you will. So I was able to take my previous relationships with them and begin intervention quickly. That was a really big accomplishment because nothing had been done. So that was a very exciting for the tribe. We were also able to establish a tutoring contract, and we were able to provide tutoring to those students who were chronically absent or maybe even already truant. So they would have an opportunity to get caught up with school. We were even able to bring some of our tutors into the school to do extra group tutoring for certain classes, just as a additional resource for some of our schools. So that was a very, very big accomplishment for us as well. And something else that was really exciting, and it sounds like Stephen and I have a version of this in common with each other, because of my history and background within the public schools setting in Michigan, we were able to, I was able to provide insight to the tribe about really how the schools work and how they function. And as I learned more about the tribe, I was able to kind of give the school a little more insight as to how the tribe runs and how our families operate. So those were very exciting accomplishments for me and for the program and the tribe. And those are the things that kind of keep me going every day, is knowing that all these little victories really are big victories when we get to look back on them. So thank you.
That's wonderful. It sounds like you were kind of like a freeway, if you will, with the school, the tribe, the families, the children. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Stephen, did you want to go ahead and share some of your accomplishments that you've had with San Pasqual?
Yeah, thank you, Teresa, and thank you, Kaylie, for what you shared. We were kind of going over these questions, and I had to kind of sit and reflect. This was kind of difficult for me because there's so much that I wanted to say, and it's a balance of, there's things that we've accomplished as an education department, but I really wanted to highlight some of our students have accomplished, because that is a reflection kind of of the work that we do, and those are things that we're all proud of. So one of the things that I'm proud that we accomplished is when I started this position. So we got the 2018 grant. I didn't start until about February of 2019. So there were several months where the position wasn't filled, similar to what Kaylie said. So I had to come in kind of right away, and I had grant financial management training and a whole bunch of things kind of just that kind of fell onto my lap early on. But really just I took a step back and kind of just had to get a lay of the land, get to understand the education department, how it worked, and kind of just find my way here. And one of the things that we accomplished early on was we recognized that there weren't really for our students where there were really concerns, whether it's academically, substance abuse, or there other behavioral health concerns that we have. We didn't really have solid, policies and procedures in place for our education department. So the question was, how do we deal with those situations as they arise? So one of the things that happened, for example, I think the first month that I was here, we had 3 students that got caught, unfortunately, in our bathroom with a vaping device. So we really didn't have systems in place to kind of address, those situations. We understood that there's that balance of obviously there needs to be some sort of consequence, but we don't want to turn students away from our education department. For some of our students, this is a safe space for them. This is some of the only activities that we offer in this community. We're in a rural community, so there aren't very many activities for our students to do, as it is. So we certainly don't want to turn students away and not give them any opportunities or experiences. So one of the things that we did early on was develop to those policies and procedures. Come up with a list of expectations, and kind of in general, we have all of our students and parents every year that they register with our education department. They all sign kind of an acknowledgement that they've read through our student and parent handbook and kind of just what those expectations are. And even something as subtle as changing the language of what that handbook looks like. So instead of, a list of rules, it's a list of expectations. Something as simple as switching that language up and how you approach it can make all the difference in the world. So that was one of the first things that we had to do, was really just put those systems in place for our education department in terms of building the capacity to handle those situations as they kind of come up. And in addition to that, just developing intake and assessment paperwork. So one of the things that we understood is that for certain situations, for example, for a student that might need counseling, treatment, that kind of is beyond the scope of what we can do here at our education department. I'm not a licensed counselor. We don't have any licensed counselors in our education department. So when we recognize that a student might need services beyond what we can offer, how can we connect them to those resources, and how can we kind of assess what they may or may not need and how we can best support them? So developing all of those policies, procedures, assessment and evaluation paperwork in-house, making sure that we have all of the right paperwork in terms of keeping everything confidential. That was one of the main concerns when we even started this program, was how do we address the confidentiality with our students that attend our ed center. Again, it's a very tight-knit community. We have a lot of aunties, uncles, cousins. A lot of our students here are family members. A lot of what we hear at times is just word of mouth, and it's called, can be gossipy at times. So we wanted to protect our students and our families from those situations. So the moment that any of those situations kind of came up, I made it clear to students, and community members, their parents, that that information is kept in-house, kept within, I keep certain files and things of that nature locked up. So wanted to reassure them of how seriously we take their confidentiality, and what's discussed in some of those meetings stays within those meetings. So those are some of the small accomplishments as an education department, but I wanted to speak to some of the things that our students have done. So I think our greatest accomplishment is currently we have today we have I think we have three former students that actually work here at our education department. They're AmeriCorps mentors. And that's such a beautiful thing. These are students that came to our education department for the after school program, and now they are my coworkers. We joke about it every day, but that's huge that they came back, and that it was important for them to come back and give back to the community in that way. So I think that's our greatest accomplishment, because those are the results. That's why we do the work that we do, is so that they can come back and give to the community. And these are students that we pushed them along the way, jokingly telling me they were going to drop out. I don't want to finish. And I'm like, no, you're there. You're right there at the finish line. They graduated, they finished, and now they're coming back, and they're working with our tribal youth. So I think that's one of our greatest accomplishments. And then just, beyond that, the academic success that we've seen over the last, several years. We have a student currently that attends UCLA. That's a big deal. I think the last I checked, the acceptance rate there is 10%, and she's within that 10% that attends UCLA. We have 2 other students that are eyeing UCLA and applying and working with us, and we've already started their college applications. And I'm proud of these students. And again, that's they put in the work. We're just here as a support, and their achievements and their accomplishment is just a reflection of our education department as a whole. So those are things that we're definitely proud of here.
You can take it off mute. That is absolutely incredible, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing that. What a beautiful share, and the accomplishments that just having the youth wanting to come back and be a part of, and now you guys get to be coworkers. So how fantastic is that? That's great. Awesome. Well, I don't know if you want to continue on, Stephen, with the next question, and then we'll hop back over to Kaylie in just a few minutes. But if you wanted to share one of the greatest challenges that you faced during the implementation, and the strategies you employed to decrease those challenges.
Sure. Thank you. Hopefully I'm not too long-winded. I know I can, Teresa, we've been on calls together. And once I get going in this stuff, I feel like I can talk forever. So I'll try to be mindful of everyone's time. So to answer this question, it's kind of twofold. I guess I'll start, in terms of challenges, I'll start with challenges personally. One being non-native, not even being from California, coming from Pennsylvania, there's some challenges that came with that, and just asking myself how I would fit in. Again, this is the work is unique in the sense that consider myself a respectful person, but respect within a tribal community means a lot more than just kind of your day-to-day interactions. And it's respect and acknowledging the land that you're on. It's respect for elders. It's respect for traditional practices. And it goes beyond just kind of that regular idea of respect that we have. And it's really going beyond just the what things are. It's, within a tribal community, I've learned that it's not always just the what, it's the why. Why do you do what you do? Why do we do things a specific way? And for me, that was a challenge, and not even in a negative way. It was just a humbling experience, because bringing in, the knowledge and expertise that I had, I did have to kind of sit back and at times just listen more than I spoke in certain situations, because that was important as we were trying to integrate what I knew and understanding that there was a unique approach to prevention work. So that was a personal challenge for me. And it's honestly a challenge that's ongoing. I'm constantly learning, even with the opening that I shared, Hauka, that's how we say hello, but it's not just saying hello. It is quite literally, the translation is the fire in me recognizes the fire in you. So those are questions that I'm constantly asking. Things as simple as, you don't just come here and gather sage. You have to offer something before you do that. And unfortunately, we have people that don't know that. I remember I was at a friend's house, and there was a young lady there, and she was burning sage, and I knew she was doing it the wrong way, and the intention behind it and why you do that. And there's just remembering that, there's certain things that I've learned and picked up along the way. I surprised myself with how much I've retained. And again, that's talking with elders, that's talking with students. Those are things that mean a great deal to me and are important to me. So again, it's not always the what, it's the why behind it. And I think that just goes back to that, respect. So that was one of the challenges, and really something that I work at every day. In terms of our program here, and I'm sure other programs have this similar experience, but just in general, getting that buy-in and getting the engagement with our youth and our families, especially for the age group that I work with, which is our middle and high school students. Primarily, our education department, all of the activities and programs that we have it's all voluntary. So even our after school program, our students don't have to be here. They, unless their parents make them, which is the case for a lot of our, our younger students. But, by the time they hit middle school and high school, a lot of our students are able to walk home after they get the bus drops them off right here on the reservation. So a lot of our students can just walk home if they choose. So really, how do you get that buy-in and make it an environment that they want to be in? So facing some of those challenges, I think the first and foremost was just being present in the community. One of the things I immediately did was any community events or other things that were going on, making myself available to be at those events, do an information table, talk with community members, whether they were from San Pasqual or not, just talking with people in general, building those connections, speaking about the program, because a lot of times we would run into, I didn't know you guys were doing that at the Ed Center. Everyone just kind of looks at the Ed Center sometimes as, well, I know the kids kind of come there, they do their homework and they get some help and you guys give them snacks, but there's a plethora of resources and activities that we do here. So just speaking up about the program and just asking those questions, developing surveys. Again, I wanted to get a feel for what the community thought we needed. And you do prevention work, and you may have the best intentions in terms of all the things you want to implement, and that's great, except you have to really gauge and have an understanding for that specific community. What are the needs? What are the things that would benefit them? So having those conversations, there were times where I wouldn't even give a person a survey. I would just sit there and have the conversation, make mental notes, and kind of keep that information in mind as we were looking to implement and come up with ideas and strategies for programming. So it's super important to kind of just be present. It starts with that. In addition to that, I would say really bridging those gaps and strengthening some of those relationships with community partners. Relationships are huge in terms of what other programs can we use to supplement what we're doing here. That's working with our school district, and that's been a relationship within our community that's been a challenge at times. But I've been relentless in setting those meetings with superintendents, principals, vice principals, and being intentional in that way, and giving them that knowledge that I've learned, too, in terms of being present. You guys can come to our Ed Center, come check out the reservation, come out here and see what we have going on. So just any opportunities to meet people here within the community, outside of community, and considering who we can bring in, doing those things. An example of something kind of different that we brought here for our prevention work, we started a summer nights program for our high school students, and that's now including our middle school students. What we realized is in the summer, there's a lot of downtime, schools out, and we wanted something for our youth to do. When we were writing for the grant, we realized that a lot of the problems that we were running into in terms of juvenile delinquency and some of those at-risk behaviors, and just talking with students in general, Steve, we're bored. There's nothing to do up here. There's not much for us. Okay, so we needed to come up with something that would give them an opportunity. What are the alternatives? So one of the things that my old director from our previous jobs always told me when in prevention work, sometimes it's just about having fun. Get back to the basics. Give them something fun to do. The prevention and education will come along with that. That can be baked into everything that you do. So our summer nights program was just that. We, over a 2-week period, said, hey, come to the Ed Center, not our normal 2:30 to 5 hours. Come here from 7 to 11 at night. And it kind of shocked them. Oh, we can be here that late? Yeah, we're gonna have food, and not just the regular snacks that you get. We're talking nachos, Indian tacos, pizza, wings, all the good stuff. We want you guys to have a good time. So we took that, brought them in, gave them some good food, snacks, games, fun, but then we also brought in our community partners. Just a quick 20-30 minute presentation that kind of got baked into the fun activities, and we were able to capture them that way. The first year we had our chairman come and speak to our students. He spoke about, growing up here on the reservation and kind of everything that led him to be our leader here at the tribe. We've had, people from economic development. So we tried to bring in people that were outside of kind of the norm in terms of the prevention, presentations that they're used to. We have our Indian Health Council, a great asset here. 10 minutes down the road, they come and do a lot of prevention presentations, and our students are used to that. And we wanted to do something different. Now we included them in that, but we let them know, hey, let's kind of step outside of the norm of, hey, don't do drugs. They're not good for you. And, the stuff that they're used to hearing. So we just wanted to do something different. And, that summer nights program has carried over to, today, 2023, we're still doing those programs, and those become things that our students and parents start to look forward to. Can be rough to start and slow in the beginning, but if you do something enough and the kids really latch onto it, it'll be something that they look forward to and creates that buzz. So those are some of the strategies that we use to address those challenges. And I would say, yeah, the buy-in, again, I'm sure a lot of you have that similar experience, is a tough one, and there's no one right answer to it. But I would say just continue talking, with your youth, talking with your community, seeing what they really want and what would be effective. So yeah, those are how we address those challenges.
That's fantastic. Boy, you gave us just so much information to go off of, Stephen. And, it doesn't even seem like the challenges that you were talking about were really necessarily challenges, because you were able to really kind of combat those and bring positives out of them in such a meaningful way. So thank you for sharing on that question. Kaylie, did you want to go ahead and speak on some of those challenges that you and I have talked about?
Yes. Yeah, I would love to. Stephen, I so appreciate your share. I had a lot of similar things on my list, so I get to go a totally different route with this. So I do think it's pretty difficult, and I don't know if any of you have this. I think you do. You have this experience. A lot of us have the experience of, we come into a position, especially a grant position, and we have to execute somebody else's vision. I found some of that to be extremely challenging, because I had like an internal struggle with it, because it wasn't what I thought was needed to fix the problem. But in order to follow through on the grant, that was something I had to do. So I used my musician kind of brain, my creative brain, to come up with some activities, again, tie in activities to other activities that were already established. Our grant, the person who wrote the grant before me, for example, said I needed to bring in speakers to speak to youth about the importance of education. I was like, I don't know if I can get anybody to come to an event that's just that. So we tied it in with our education banquet. That was how we had a keynote speaker. And everybody's invited to that. So that kind of worked out well. So I think getting really creative is super important with the grants. Something else that was very troublesome, as I entered this position and really started doing my research on truancy in the state of Michigan and the laws that went along with it, was really finding out that schools kind of get to determine whatever they feel like is truancy. And they can kind of address it however they feel like it. So like they can say, yep, you're truant after 5 days, or you're truant after 60 days. It doesn't matter within the state. So what I did, which was a really cool thing, there's an author, I don't know if any of you have read any of Glennon Doyle's works, but she says the door isn't even locked. And I always thought maybe like I couldn't do things, or I needed permission, but I decided the door isn't locked. So we started a task force with different community organizations. So our Anishinaabe Family Services, with our tribal police, with our local police, our school leaders, the county court system, the tribal court system, to streamline a process that everybody was going to agree on for truancy, whether it took place at Suttons Bay Public School or Northport Public School or Leland Public School, whether it took place within a tribal family on tribal land or a non-tribal family that would go to county court. So this, I just invited people to a meeting, and guess what? People showed up. You never know what's going to happen. And now we have this great system where, I mean, the schools all have the same letters, because as I'm sure some of you know that have worked in prevention, if a kid's truant at one school, often they just slip over to another school and they'll just bounce around. Now we kind of have that monitored, and that process is streamlined. So that is a really, really, really great thing within our community. So, and Teresa and I had a great chat earlier this week about, I came from the public education setting. So I came into this job with a lot of knowledge about schools and how schools are run. But I've never been anything other than a teacher or a server, my whole life. So I didn't know anything about grants. I didn't know anything really about reporting, because it looks really different on the education side. There's somebody else entirely who's in charge of that, not the teacher. I never really worked with a budget, because you know what? Teachers don't get a lot of money to start with. And I really didn't receive a lot of training on any aspect of this job. I was hired because they said, oh, you'll be good with families, kids, you've worked within our community, you'll figure it out. And I don't know how many of you have felt like you've gotten the you figure it out training, but it's probably my least favorite training. So but you do figure it out, and you do learn a lot. Something that was really hard for me was kind of figuring out who and which organizations could help me with each aspect of this job. I should tell you too, I refer to myself as because I am currently the truancy prevention program within the tribe. There are 4 other positions that would be working collaborative in the school systems with me. All 4 of them are available. So, if anybody wants to come and be a student service and student support advisor, we've got it's really beautiful up here in Northern Michigan. So, I couldn't figure out when I started, what was the OJJDP part? What was the TYRC? Who did the TTA belong to? What does a program manager do? So that was all the grant end of the stuff. And then I never worked anywhere other than a public school or a restaurant. So I was like, who do I send my bills to? Who do I call if I'm not going to go to work because my supervisor isn't in my building? So Teresa and I talked a lot about creating a kind of a, what do we call it? A flow chart of who you go to for which problems, and kind of keeping track of it as you go. So if I had a question about program planning or implementation, that's when I would contact Deidre, who is my TTA through the Tribal Youth Resource Center. If I had a question about the technicalities of the grant rules, or if I needed something interpreted, I would go to Christine, because she's my grant manager. She's my grant manager through OJJDP. Then if I had a question about finances within my organization, I called around until finally, I can call Stacy for those things. And just sort of keep your flow chart and keep adding to it and adjusting it. Because also then, like Stephen was saying, we don't have all the answers. I'm also not a licensed counselor. So what can I realistically as one person do as a truancy intervention specialist? And who else in our community, within our tribe, can I call in for assistance? So we now have a system where if I get a referral for truancy, I file paperwork with our Anishinaabe Family Services, and hopefully they can get assigned to my truancy case, and we'll have this bigger network of support for these families that really need help getting to school. I'm very fortunate that our tribal court here in Leelanau County, the GTB tribal court, really views truancy as a symptom and not as a disease. So we don't just treat the symptoms, we try to take a holistic approach and really get to the center of what's causing the truancy and not just throw an alarm clock at them and tell them, well, you should be able to figure this out. So what's going on? What are your needs beyond just getting up and getting to school? So those are some of my strategies. Collaboration, building relationships and connections. Oh, and ask a lot of questions. Listen a lot and ask questions, because I've also discovered being a non-native, it's okay that I don't know a lot about the Native culture, traditions, life. I just listen and I ask a lot of questions, because that's the only way I'm going to have any insight on what other strategies I can implement to help these families, is if I really can truly listen. So that, I think that's my share on that question. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kaylie. Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things that I was visioning as I was listening to you talking was kind of like, you're taking off all these hats and putting on all these other hats, and the fact that you've been able to, use some really innovative strategies, to implement it within the program, reaching out to community partners, walking into it and really not knowing what direction to take, but then you just did it. You sent out invites and people showed up. And so to be able to identify those and use those to your benefit moving forward for the greater good of helping the youth is awesome. And I see that both with both you and Stephen. So that's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so I think what we're going to do, since we're getting closer to the end of the hours, I'm going to just kind of mirror or marry the last two questions together. And, if you want to just share on some of those strategies, some of your key takeaways with that, and then, how you feel like you would be able to then take those into sustainability, if at the end of the grant, if there wasn't another cycle that happened. So, Stephen, did you want to share on some of your key takeaways and then how you think you can use those within sustainability of the program?
Yes, thank you for the question. And Kaylie, there's a lot that you said in that last question I'm going to kind of bounce off of to even answer this question. So I think we both have spoken a lot about the importance of relationships. And I think it's, on its face, it seems like a simple concept, but it's not easy to do. And not everyone, and especially in this work, always gets how truly important and critical that is to the work that we do. And that's just relationships at many different levels. So I'll start with, the relationships with the students themselves, your tribal youth. It started there with me. When I started in 2019, we had about we get about 150 students total that are registered with our education department. And I would say for our high school population, we average about 30 that are registered with us per year. So to kind of give you some context, we had about 4 or 5 students of that 30 that were registered attending the Ed Center when I first started. So that's a significantly low number. But it had its benefits. Those were 4 to 5 students that I saw pretty much every day, that I was able to build relationships. Those are youth that, again, are now graduated, working off at college. And again, one of them is actually working with me. But sitting down, having those conversations with them, I would say it's just as important to obviously get that wisdom from elders within your community, but also lean into your youth. It's amazing to see what they've learned from their elders and talking with their family members. And again, as a non-native, like Kaylie said, I'm just trying to get that information from whoever's willing to share it. And it's beautiful to see how much knowledge our youth have kind of gotten passed down to them. So that's one of the most critical things. That's kind of how you get those students in the door, where there isn't a lot of trust there at times. I've had students share with me, especially with our AmeriCorps grant, unfortunately, the way it's kind of set up here is our AmeriCorps mentors that come in. It's kind of a 2-year program that they do in terms of the benefits that they get. So for our AmeriCorps, we have 10 spots that are available each year that we try to keep those positions filled. And what comes with that program is they do get like a cost of living stipend, and then they also get scholarship money to attend school while they're doing the AmeriCorps program. Now that scholarship only lasts for them for 2 years here. So a lot of our AmeriCorps, unfortunately, they'll come for a year or two and then they're gone. So there's a lot of turnover with our AmeriCorps staff, unfortunately, and our students feel that. They're used to seeing our AmeriCorps mentors at least leave. We have some staff members that aren't AmeriCorps, like myself, and some other positions here that have kind of been more mainstays here. But with our AmeriCorps, there's a lot of coming and going, unfortunately, and it's great. When some of them do stay, we've had AmeriCorps mentors that stay beyond that 2 years, and they're just willing to work with our youth, and they're no longer getting a scholarship. They're just getting kind of that paid stipend, but they're not getting paid to go to school anymore, and that means a lot, to our students. So the importance of relationships with our students is definitely one of the key takeaways that I've had, and for a number of reasons. You build those relationships with the 4 to 5 students that I started with. Fly. 4 or 5 students can turn into, currently we have about in 2023, I just did the numbers, we have about 14, 15 students now that attend regularly. So that's a huge spike. And that's just, again, building those relationships with that small number of students, and, word of mouth kind of spreads. And, Steve, those high school mentors, they're all right. They're cool, and that gets more students that are willing to come and hang out with us. We have students that come on days that our education department isn't even open. And I've taken it, I let them come in. Hey, you guys want to come hang out? I got work to do. I'll be in my office, but you guys are more than welcome to hang out in the high school room. So they just want to, they want to be here. And that's important. Relationships with our community partners, learning what resources are available is important, because that helps with the sustainability piece. If heaven forbid, I always look at it, if I wasn't here tomorrow for whatever reason, what can we keep going here? If this program wasn't here, how can we keep this going? And it's those relationships with the school district, with our tribal police, with Indian Health, with our tribal court, and those resources that are available. And then overall, everything that we do here for our tribal youth at our education department is free to them. And if we don't have the money, we find the money. So those are a lot of the key takeaways.
That's really awesome. Thank you, Stephen, for sharing that. It is really truly all about relationship building and kind of breaking down some of those silos, because even like you were talking about the carrying on those relationships, if for some reason you weren't there tomorrow, at least those relationships will have been built prior to leaving. So I appreciate you sharing that. Kaylie, if you wanted to maybe answer, kind of mesh 3 and 4 together as we're getting closer to the end of the hour.
Absolutely. So I think there's 2 main ways for this truancy program to continue. Because if there's not an additional grant I can apply for to continue this program, I am like 99% sure it would not be funded by our tribe. So I have to think ahead. I kind of been playing a little bit of a short game and a long game at the same time. How do I continue this work without actually being here? So there's 2 ways that I'm juggling this. So one of them is we have the student support advisors that the positions are currently not filled, but we have 4 of them in various locations around our service area. And when those positions are filled, I plan on taking this piece of what I do and sharing it and training those employees, because they are the ones that are going to be in the schools with the kids, doing the work that I do, but they will have smaller groups of kids so they can get a little bit more in depth with the students. So I'm like thinking about how am I going to train the next people who are going to do this. And the other part of that is to really, really build up the parent and the school connections. When I started this position, someone said, like, don't just be a crutch for these parents. Help them communicate with the school. And I really had to like sit back and think about, okay, how can I do that? Because I would love to just come in and fix everything for everybody, but that's not really empowering the people. So one thing that I'm fortunate in my personal life right now is I'm studying for a master's degree in education, focusing on development and training. So working with adults and teaching adults is kind of what I'm studying. So I get to work with these families and I get to show them how we communicate with schools, how we foster positive relationships with teachers and with administrators. And because there are so many people that will pick up a 231-534 number because they know it's coming from inside the tribe. And they're not going to pick up a 231-271 number because they know that comes from in the school. That's what I want. That's the shift I want to make. I want that 271 number, or whatever those numbers are before the school phone number that shows up on the phone. I want the parents to want to pick that up because they know on the other side that the school will want to collaborate with them. And then there's also the piece of educating the schools and educating the staff. I am just a I am not one to communicate the Native American story with schools to schools. That comes from other people in our community. But I do have the opportunity to say, hey, school, I have these people that really need to share their history of schools with your staff. So your staff understands why there are issues. And that's a fault of the American school system, is that we don't educate on boarding school culture. It's starting to just sort of get peeled back a little bit, and the more that I'm here and the more stories that I hear, it needs to be told in a way that families can, or that families feel comfortable and schools can understand, so they can build relationships. Again, that's not my story to tell, but I can set up opportunities for those education pieces for staff of school. So those are kind of some of my strategies. And I am here to serve this community and listen in this community. So I'm hoping that I'm doing that, and I'm hoping it's improving family and school and youth interactions.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Kaylie, for sharing that, and for both of you, giving us your the willingness. Excuse me. Excuse me. Got a frog in my throat today. But you're, coming and sharing, just having your willingness to come and share your experiences within the communities, and recognizing that even though, both of you may be non-native, you have a heart and a passion for the youth and to build those relationships. And I feel like the theme today was really just building relationships with family and community, and, different community partners and things like that, and just kind of bringing everybody together. So that way, like you said, being able to sustain the program, long after maybe these grants are available, is hugely important. So, and how do you do that? So thank you again for being able to answer these questions and share some of your experiences. And that it doesn't seem like that without really the relationships within community, that we're able to kind of move past some of these challenges. And so the fact that you guys have been really able to come in and recognize that there may be some different avenues that you can take to different innovative strategies to overcome some of these challenges. So again, thank you both so very much for being able to come in and join us today. And I think what I'd like to do at this point, and Tony, if you can go to the next slide, I think we're going to open it up for reflections from our participants, whether it be in the chat box, or if you maybe want to raise your hand and come off and mute, to maybe ask a question or share a comment of something that you've heard today that really resonated with you. We would love to hear from those of you in the audience. It looks like we have one that I'm seeing pop up, a 507 area code. Or not. Jerry, I didn't happen to notice if there were any questions kind of during the conversation, if there was anything that popped up in the chat box at all. But if you caught something, if you'd like to bring that awareness.
I did not see any questions or feedback in the chat box or in the question and answer section either. We do have at least 7 folks that are not staff. We want to encourage you to share what you've learned or takeaway message that you really feel compelled to keep with you, or if there's a lingering gap somewhere that you feel one of our panelists might be able to answer, because they just did a really awesome job of implementing what we refer to as tribal best practices in developing relationships, community, and connections, especially with our young people and their parents. So I would strongly recommend that you take advantage of their presence, because they're a couple of really amazing people.
I'm going to share my email in the chat. If anybody has anything later that they think back on, or that they have a question for me, I'd be more than happy to answer that via email. So I'm just going to pop that in there real quick.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for doing that, Kaylie. I think that's super helpful. A lot of times it's really hard to think of questions, right off the top of your head, but being able to kind of think back and resonate with the conversation today. And then, if there are any questions, that your willingness to keep those lines of communication open is super helpful. So thanks for doing that. Perfect. Oh, thanks, Stephen. You too. Awesome. Yeah, I think, just, in spending the time that I have been able to spend, with Stephen and the willingness to continuously want to learn. And it's not just about like, doing strategic planning and kind of the technical pieces of things, but it's more about, he and I just building relationship. And, when there have been different instances that have come up, Stephen's always, first to say like, hey, do you know anything, like for instance, the teen vaping, and how can we support our community in that? And, are there any resources, different things that other communities that are doing? And so, being able as a TA to go and support Stephen in that way. And I know Kaylie does the same exact thing, just reaching out and asking for for support, and resources and that willingness to continuously be taught different things because we don't know everything, right? And I again, just talking about like Stephen being able to kind of uplift the voices of the youth and always having them kind of at the forefront of the conversations, wanting to elevate their some of their talents and putting them in different situations like internships or into the AmeriCorps and I think what is so touching for me as a TA working with Stephen is just how incredibly proud of the youth he is. Um, and he shares that all the time, like, hey, we've got, these youth that they're getting ready to graduate or, the student going to UCLA um, and to be able to work with a youth maybe from middle school or early on in high school and then to watch them grow and become young adults and that's how you really know that these strategies and these being able to overcome these challenges is really working in each of your communities. And so really I just want to empower and uplift both of you in the work that you're doing and share my gratitude just for that you're really there for the youth and you want to hear their voices and you want to see them succeed and to be able to build a relationship within community to make that happen is really incredible. So thank you so much. And with that, I'll pause and go back to see if we have any participants that have joined that would like to ask a question or have any reflections. Again, you can use the chat box. And Stephen and Kaylie have both added their email addresses in the chat box if you maybe think of something later on. Or if not, you can certainly reach out to your TA that would also be happy to help with any answering any questions that you might have. But we love to hear your reflections. And so I am going to turn it back over to Antonia to share about the evaluation piece of things. So it looks like Antonia has put the end of the session evaluation up on the screen. And we would love to hear, from you on, if this has helped increase your knowledge or made you feel a little bit more comfortable in the implementation phase of things and, overcoming some challenges or, uplifting the successes of your program. So again, we'd love to hear from you. Next slide, please, Antonia. Okay. Stephen and Kaylie, do you have any last minute things that you would like to share? And if not, I will turn it over to Jerry. And then we'll have Sydney, which is a youth ambassador, do our closing today.
Thank you, participants, and Stephen and Teresa and Jerry and our students that are doing our opening and closing. I appreciate you guys tuning in, listening, and my best wishes and good luck.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'll add to that. Again, I thank everyone for being here on the call, being with us today. Thank you to Teresa, Jerry, Antonia, getting all this organized and setting this up. And I'll end with that because there's a lot more that I want to say, but I'll be respectful of everyone's time. Again, just thank you all so much.
Wonderful. Thank you again, both of you, so very much for joining us today. And I will turn it over to maybe we'll turn it over to Sydney to do the closing, unless Jerry, if you have anything you'd like to add.
Nope. Let's go to closing. Sydney?
Sure.
Antonia, can we just shut off the recording before Sydney begins her closing?